Maybe you're considering buying a timeshare and you want to know what is timeshare, what it's all about, and how are the different ways timeshares work. Well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about exactly that. What is a timeshare? Right after this. Hello and welcome. I'm Jeremy, and this is Destination Timeshare, the timeshare channel dedicated to everything about timeshares. Today's video, we're going to talk about what is a timeshare. Let's jump right into this. So first thing we're actually going to talk about here is what is the definition of timeshare? And I actually went out and looked at Oxford Languages, and they state it as the arrangement whereby several joint owners have the right to use a property as a vacation home under a time-sharing agreement. Kind of obvious there. If you have any kind of idea of what timeshare is, obviously multiple people purchasing rights to a property to be able to travel and vacation for a certain period of time every year, or maybe even every other year. So now let's talk about the different ownership structures. And the first one here happens to be deeded ownership. This is actually probably the most like traditional real estate, where you own a home or a condo. You get a deed to that property. With timeshare, however, you're only buying a fraction of that property. If you're buying 1 week a year, you're getting 1/52nd of that unit. And maybe you're buying an every other year deed, you're then getting 1/104th of that property or that individual unit. You're buying a specific unit and a specific week, but you might not be tied to that week. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But yeah, that is how deeded ownership works. You actually get a deed. The deed is recorded with the county to record that you are an owner at that property. You're going to see this type of ownership most often in North America, though you might see it in some other places around the world. But this is pretty much the most common type of ownership in the United States, North America, and Canada as well. So next up, we're going to talk about within deeded ownership, there are several different types of structures of how that deeded ownership can work. You might have a fixed week and fixed unit ownership where you buy a week every year in a specific unit. So you know every year when you return, you're going for maybe July 4th, whether it be week 51 or 52 for Christmas or New Year's, and you'll always be in unit number 125. So that is fixed week, fixed unit. They essentially divide that unit up to 52 individual ownerships and sell each week of the year. Next up is fixed week floating units. So this might be a situation where you buy a specific week, but you don't know the actual unit you'll be in. That might change every single year. So you're going to go to the same place, same week of the year. Just when you get there, they'll assign you a unit at check-in. Next up, we have floating weeks. This is very different than the other two, but still kind of similar in that you own an actual deeded week and a deeded unit, but those are just essentially there for inventory purposes. You don't actually own the specific right to stay in that unit for that week every year. The actual week and unit number that are on your deed, just strictly inventory purposes. So how this essentially works is each week is actually assigned a season. So you might have white, blue, red season. Those are kind of the older traditional seasons. Some of the newer seasons are more like silver, gold, platinum, platinum plus, those types of things. The better weeks of the year, the holidays, the summer weeks, the New Year's, the Christmas, spring break, those are usually more of like the platinum season or the gold seasons. And then the lower seasons are kind of more the shoulder or off season, May, October, November, those types of weeks. So you are more specifically kind of buying a specific season at a resort. And then you can call up and make a reservation for just about any time within your season that you own for the size of unit that you own as well. There is no guarantee when you arrive what actual unit you will be in, but you'll be in the size of the unit that you booked at the resort in the season that you own. Now the final one here is kind of what we call event weeks. You don't see these in all of the different timeshare systems, but some systems seem to have these a little more than others. And this is kind of a mix between the two, a mix between fixed week, fixed unit, and floating. Essentially what you're doing is you have the ability to book a specific week and you pay more for it to have this ability to book, say, a prime week. These event weeks are usually prime weeks. Christmas, New Year's, July 4th, Independence Day in the United States, spring break, maybe President's Day in ski season at those mountain resorts. These are what we call event weeks, and it gives you the ability to book and reserve that specific week, but you probably won't be guaranteed a specific unit, and you might even be able to pick your check-in day. Event weeks usually have different check-in days. You can check in on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So it's just kind of a mix between the two, a little bit more like floating unit, floating week, but you are tied to a specific week. Sometimes they do give you the ability to, like if you own an event week, what we sometimes call Platinum Plus, they may let you book sometimes in the regular Platinum system, but not usually. Usually you're tied to that specific event week every year. Before we get too much further into this video, I do want to ask, it really will help with this video, help push it out to more people looking to learn about timeshare. If you would hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, really does help with the videos, really helps me out a lot, helps these videos, helps the channel, and we want to get this message out to as many people looking to learn about timeshares. Okay, so with weeks ownership, whether it's direct from a developer or resale, you are going to be paying for a specific week, a specific amount of time every year or every other year for your right to occupy and stay at a resort for a specific period of time, for however much time you purchased. Now, most often with week systems, you're actually paying a maintenance fee based on how much it is per week. For the most part, everybody at the resort, whether they own a prime week or a low season week, pays the same maintenance fee. So keep that in mind. If you're looking at buying a lower season, you're going to be paying essentially the maintenance fee that's the same as somebody who owns a prime July 4th or Christmas week. There are some variances here, especially in Florida, but for the most part, you're paying pretty close to what those high season owners are paying. Now, something to consider if you own an every other year ownership, you might just be paying 50% of the fee every year. So when you stay every other year, essentially you're paying about the same as somebody who's paying every year for the same amount of usage. Some resort systems, though, they just charge the maintenance fee in the actual year that you travel. So different systems work a little bit differently here. But essentially, keep in mind fees for weeks ownership, pretty much based on how much you own, how many weeks you own, and you're pretty much paying the same as everybody else at the resort for the same size unit. So now let's talk about point ownership. In many cases, point ownerships can in fact be deeded. A lot of timeshare resort companies have gone to trust-based systems where they convey a whole bunch of timeshare weeks, maybe entire resorts, to a land trust, and then allocate a number of points to each of those weeks, to each of those resorts, sometimes to each night at a resort, and then they sell off blocks of points for you to buy to be able to book within the timeshare system. Just another form of deeded ownership. The more points you own, traditionally, the more time you are able to stay at a timeshare resort, or maybe you want to be able to book high season, which will cost more than low season. So depending on how you use it, points ownership can be pretty flexible in allowing you to stay however long or as short as you want, or different times of the year. Okay, now we're going to talk about the next type of ownership, and that is right to use. You're not really purchasing anything. You're not buying any actual real estate. You're not buying a week. You're essentially just paying a membership fee, signing a contract that gives you the right to use a certain amount of time at a resort or group of resorts every year, every other year, or however often you've actually signed up for. So you don't actually own anything tangible. You don't have a deed to hold in your hand. Deeds, obviously, you can pass those on to heirs. You can sell it. Right to use might be a little bit different. You should usually be able to sell that, but you might not be able to pass it on. Essentially, when you pass away, the contract also ends. Of course, they do sell, whether it be 1 week a year, 1 week every other year, or maybe you're also buying points, kind of similar to deeded points, but it is just a right to use contract. You don't really specifically own anything other than the right to use that timeshare based on the stipulations outlined in the contract. Most often, right to use, you're going to see this actually in places outside the United States, places like Mexico, the Caribbean, overseas, international locations, where timeshare ownership maybe isn't kind of like it is in the United States with deeded ownership. So keep that in mind if you're buying a timeshare in Mexico. Most likely you're buying something that's considered right to use versus actual deeded ownership. So now let's talk about fees. This is an important thing to know about timeshare. It all sounds great. You're buying this timeshare. I'm going to get to stay 1 week a year, or I'm getting 2, 3, 4,000 points to stay however long I want in this timeshare, whether it be deeded ownership or right to use. But the fees are something that's very, very, very important to understand, because really that is truly your ongoing cost of the timeshares, that ongoing maintenance fees. After 20, 30 years, those maintenance fees will dwarf what you actually paid up front for the timeshare. So the most important fee to know about here is the annual maintenance fee. This is just a set amount, like I mentioned earlier, that each owner pays, and it's just ongoing every year, and it quite often increases every year as well. Then we also have special assessments. These are situations where maybe there was some catastrophic event, something unexpected, maybe a hurricane, maybe wildfires. They need to pay a huge deductible on their insurance or do significant repairs to the property, and they need to charge each owner a special assessment. Sometimes that special assessment can actually be fairly significant. So keep this in mind. As an owner, you are bound to paying those maintenance fees every year, and anytime the board determines that there needs to be a special assessment, you'll also have to pay that as well in order to maintain ownership and use of the timeshare. Next up, you might have housekeeping fees. Most often these are actually included in the annual maintenance fees, but if you're making 2, 3, 4 more reservations than you actually own a week of timeshare, some timeshare systems do charge additional housekeeping fees, or they may give you like a housekeeping credit. So you own 2 weeks, you get 2 housekeeping credits, you stay 2 times in that timeshare, those 2 housekeeping fees are free, and then any other subsequent reservations after that have an additional charge. Sometimes these housekeeping fees are fairly reasonable, sometimes they're pretty high, and obviously that fee will probably change depending on the size of the unit. A studio or 1-bedroom unit probably won't be as much as a 2, 3, or 4-bedroom villa. Another fee to keep in mind here is guest fees, guest certificate fees. A lot of timeshare systems, just to simply give your timeshare to a friend or family member, will cost you a fee for the timeshare company to go in and change the name from your name to somebody else's name. Sounds pretty easy, but they like to charge fees for this. And most timeshare systems actually have what we call a guest certificate fee. Sometimes be as low as $25, $30, $50, and sometimes even more than $100 just to be able to give the use of your timeshare away to somebody. You think you're doing something nice, but then you're getting socked with this guest certificate fee. Now up is just some additional fees to keep in mind. You might have reservation, cancellation, booking, call center, or other miscellaneous fees that just aren't included in the maintenance fees that you pay every year. You might be able to call up the timeshare company to make a reservation, but they're going to want $30 or $40 to make that reservation. Kind of a barrier there to be able to make reservations for your timeshare. Cancellation fees, change fees, obviously anytime you call the timeshare company, that's an additional cost for that management company, and they're usually going to charge you for it. So keep that in mind. Some systems have those fees. Many others, though, do not. So when you're comparing systems, see what types of fees they charge. All right, so there it is. What exactly is timeshare, and a little bit more information on how it works and the fees involved. What do you think of timeshare? Are you looking to buy? I'm interested to know. Put those comments down below. And if you have any questions about timeshare, also leave those questions in the comments below. And for more videos all about timeshare, check out the description box. And for another timeshare tip video, check out this one right up here and YouTube. I think you'll like that video from my channel right there. Be sure to subscribe. You can do so by clicking on my picture right here. Hit that notification bell. And until next time, let's make your next destination a timeshare.